In this week's developer livestream, we got the Ritualist, the Paragon and the Antiquary previewed. And in this video, we're gonna take a look at the Paragon. The Paragon looks like a very good support for all game modes. It's a very unique support as well. There might be some changes that will be hopefully coming that make it a little bit more interesting in terms of trades, but I personally think it looks like a very, very strong support, and it will probably be also quite fun to play with around in open world as well. So can't wait to try it out. As always, special shout out to all my supporters on YouTube and Patreon that help me keep the lights on. And now, without much further ado, let's jump straight in and overanalyze the Paragon. We have here the Paragon. How does the Paragon work? So the Paragon gets to still have the burst mechanic while having 3 new elites, profession mechanic skills, the F2, F3 and 4. Those will always stay the same, they are not weapon dependent. Of course, you still have your weapon dependent F1 burst, but this F1 burst will only be the level 1 burst, so it will only take 1 adrenaline bar away, even though you have 3, and it will also only get the level 1 burst attack. So it will not have like the crazy, for example, fury uptime of the greatsword or something like that. But it's really important, the burst, because it fuels your other F skills. Now we will get to that in a second why. But here on the right side you can see we actually have another profession mechanic. This one is really important because you stack that up with your chance. And this is like, I can scroll a little bit ahead. Whenever you use one of your chance, those would be F2, F3, F4, you actually get those stacks. Yeah, and these stacks here change how effective your chants are. So your chant will do an initial attack. So the F2 will give some boons, the F3 will give some healing, the F4 will give other boons, and those will be more effective if you have a higher level of your stacks here. Yeah, and those stacks will be trained by the not initial effect, but the pulsing effect that comes after the initial effect of those chants. And the interesting part is those stacks, if you can upkeep them, you can get those pulsing effects of those chants that you have here upkeeping permanently. So you can pulse out some might, some fury permanently if you have consistent like generation of those stacks. That's the whole mechanic. Those stacks here will be generated by using your F1 skill or using any other F2, F3, F4 skill. Those will, so to say, generate more stacks, while the F2 to F4 pulsing attack will also drain it. So this is the whole mechanic of this class. They use longbow here because they can use the burst without hitting any enemies. The longbow burst will give the, so to say, hit effect of a burst skill even if you just hit the ground. That's one of the only burst skills that actually works like that. All the other bursts you have to hit an enemy to get all the traits procced. But the longbow burst will also work if you just use it under your feet. Okay, so let's talk about the F2 first. So the F2 is the chant of action. It will give on the initial attack some boons, and then it will some fury and some might, also for allies. And then it will give some more might and more fury depending on how much motivation, so your stacks here on the right, you will actually have, and it will decrease every time you get this proc. So if you have like this up, it will cost 1 motivation per proc of this. So it will slowly go down, but if you generated more motivation with the burst or other chance, you actually can upkeep that permanently and pulse some fury and some might out. So quite basic as a support. Let's talk about the F2. It's the chant of recuperation. This is like the healing chant. Costs 2 motivation per interval, and the initial thing gives only barrier. But the higher the level of the motivation, so if you have 10 stacks to 7 stacks, it actually heals for the most and gives some resistance as well. And the motivation cost is higher. Instead of 1 motivation cost per interval, it's 2 now. So it drains way more like harder. So that makes it a little bit like challenging to upkeep, but it's, I think, still somewhat possible. But the F4 is not possible to permanently upkeep at the highest level, because the highest level of the 4 gives swiftness, resolution and stability proccing, and it costs 3 per interval, and it decreases depending on how high the motivation is. So if it's 4 to 6 motivation that you have, it doesn't give stability anymore, but it only trains 2 per interval. And then the 1 to 3 gives only swiftness, but it only costs 1. So I think 1 to 6 is not that exciting, but 7 to 10, the stability pulsing is actually surprisingly good. And it's also a stun break. Let's see how this one plays out. I think it has not the like most insane usefulness for not being a support player. Maybe the healing one, but the other ones are like you make a lot of effort to get those chants off and pulse them out. And if you don't have any allies around, I'm not sure if the boons are like really the thing that it like keeps you alive. So I think that is like a full world versus world Zerg support, or maybe a full healer support warrior in PvE. You can play it as a bruiser, I can see it as well, or some kind of like alacrity. Nah, you will probably play it either full DPS or will play it as a full support. You don't play it as alacrity DPS, because we will get to that with the traits. And yeah, that's the profession mechanic. I would say it's not like too hard to understand, but it's also not that easy to master. You have to manage not only like understanding to get your motivation, but also upkeeping it while also doing your normal like boon uptime or healing of your weapon skills and stuff in rotation. So you have another layer on top, and it's definitely, I would say, the hardest to master warrior elite spec. I'm pretty sure about that one, even if the traits are not that interesting. But let's first talk about the utility skills. Yeah. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like this video, be sure to leave a like. That helps out my channel a bunch. So let's go to the utility skills. They are not that exciting, to be honest. I think they are good, but not that exciting. So the healing skill is just a basic healing skill, and all of the commands, as they are called, those class utility skills, have an initial effect, and they have some kind of echo. The echo will happen after 3 seconds, and it will have another proc of the exact same attack. So the beginning is just a healing for yourself and removes some conditions. Yeah. So you get some nice healing for your allies and condition cleanse. Okay, basic healing skill. But the echo will do the same thing again after 3 seconds. And the cool part here is that the echo will be after 3 seconds, but if you use a burst skill, this will be instant. So the burst skill triggers your echoes. That means that you can have some strategic gameplay where you can say, okay, I need the healing for my allies now. That's when you press your burst button. So you can't wait for 3 more seconds. Really cool idea, really interesting. So you can see it's all tied into getting bursts, getting adrenaline, using it to heal your allies or to get the procs. Really, really strong. Definitely really nice interaction there. So basic healing skill that has some cool interaction with the chants or the burst skills. Then you have find their weakness. That's again a command that does an initial attack. This is just a strike damage that will grant adrenaline. That's the important part. So you can hit 5 targets with that, get some adrenaline to use your more burst skills, and you get some might depending on how many enemies you hit with the first command attack, the initial attack. So again, just to build some adrenaline and some might. Not too exciting, but that's about it. There we go. Never surrender. This is now your defensive utility skill. It's a stun break, and you get some boons. The interesting part here is that's something new. It has a 15-second cooldown, and if you really break a stun with this and not use it only for the boons, it has a double cooldown. So it has 30 seconds of cooldown when you use that as a stun break, really when you are stunned and use it. But if you use it just for the boons, for the resistance as a solution, you have a 15-second cooldown. That's a really cool idea, and they will do that in more elite specs in the future as well. That's what they told us. So I think that's a nice thing to make the feel not as punishing if you want to use it only for the boons. And if you use, of course, the echo effect is after 3 seconds, or if you use a burst skill, you give the same boons to your allies. Okay, quite nice. More resistance as resolution. Probably more of a competitive mode skill, but even in PvE, not too bad, I would say. So let's go to the next one. Brace yourself. That's an interesting one again, because it applies barrier to yourself and your allies. And it's actually not that bad of a barrier, especially if you use some healing power, because they don't use any healing power in this showcase, and it's actually already 2k, so you can get that up quite high, I would say, on a 15-second cooldown. Looks quite potent, and the echo will just give more barrier. So you will just have another like big barrier burst if you use a burst skill, or just after 3 seconds. So it looks quite promising. I think that looks like a good skill. I would use that in PvE. I'm not sure if you would use that in competitive modes, because it's not a stun break, it's just barrier, but I think it could still work. And the last one is on your knees. Just another damage, 5 targets. Again, adrenaline generation, and apply some weakness and cripple. The interesting part here is that the cripple can proc the leg specialist trait that you have on warrior, and therefore you could immobilize 5 targets AoE around you. That's something really, really strong in competitive modes. Probably in world versus world a must have to run, because it's like insane if you like have an AoE immobilize around you. Yeah, pretty nasty. So looks like a good skill for competitive modes and adrenaline generation. I'm not sure if you would run that in PvE. We will see. And the last skill, of course, is the elite skill. The elite skill is like insane, because it gives you those wings and those like yellow orange aura. And what does it do? It prevents you from going into down state or losing health below 1 HP. So it's really interesting how it works. You will get it instantly when you activate it. So for yourself, you will get it for 3 seconds. You cannot go below 0 health. And you will get some barrier. So that's it after the effect ends. So that means that you get some life-saving barrier potentially so that you don't die after the 3 seconds, potentially. And after the 3 seconds, your allies will get the same buff. So you first have it, and then the allies will get it. So that's the most important one that you understand if you want to give your allies this lethal blow in like ignorance. You really want to use your burst skill directly after that so that the allies are actually getting this buff instantly as well. That's how it works. And it's a really strong skill, especially in some specific encounters where you can't invuln some attacks in PvE, but you still can use this attack to negate the damage. Or in World vs. World, of course, if you want to push through the enemy and you say, okay, now really aggressive push, we will give all subgroups give this effect, and we can't be killed for 3 seconds, can go really aggressive. And after that, we use all our heals. Really, really strong effect. And I think that's the bread and butter of why you would play Paragon in competitive modes, I would say. Really, really cool. So really see how this all fits together. I think it's a really nice design. So yeah, let's now talk about the traits, which are a little bit less exciting, I would say. So here the first one is gain motivation when you use your 4th or 5th weapon skill. This is just a powerhouse of a trait. It doesn't look like that, but if you use the longbow, for example, you have 4 skills that actually proc that, and you get 1 motivation when you use your 4 or 5. When you use a Warhorn example, it says short cooldown. You can get a lot of motivation by that. So you just get more spams of your chance out. That's good. That's just a very good minor trait. Yeah, I mean, the question is if you really want to have a longbow, if, you know, probably you would not use a longbow in PvE. I'm not sure. I think the longbow might not be the best choice in most game modes. Maybe pistol. I don't know. It's hard. There are not that many support weapons, so probably you're forced to run Warhorn. I'm pretty sure about that. Yeah. And then you get more strike damage and condition damage. The reduction while you have a lot of motivation up. That can be quite potent. That can be like 15 like damage reduction percentage. That's actually quite a lot if you have 10 motivation stacks up, but not too exciting. It's just a tanky trait. That's about it. So gain motivation when you enter combat. That's I think that's okay, but not crazy. If no refrains are active, automatically activate the refrain of chant of action. That's like just a very like open world trait. I think you would not run that in most situations in all other game modes, because it's like if the fight is longer than 15 seconds, this trait is useless. Then you have Calming Tongue. That's just a stat stick. You get more stats. That's it. You get more healing power and more concentration. That's a very boring trait. Again, not too exciting, but it's a good trait. You know, get more stats. And the last one is really interesting because you get more movement speed pathlessly, and Chill and Cripple have less effectiveness in terms of movement speed reduction. Again, a trait that you would never ever use in PvE, but in competitive modes, why not? You know, the other two don't look that exciting. I think this is the PvP trait. 100%. I think you would run that all the time. It doesn't matter if you're a bruiser, if you're a support, you would always run that one. Then you have Brisk Pacing. Using a chant reduces the recharge of your other chants, so that makes it more spammable. You will see that with another trait that provides alacrity. You really want to spam your chants with this trait, and just spamming F2 into F3 into F4 recharges the F2 and F3 and F4 all the time, and you spam it more often, giving alacrity and that kind of stuff. So it's like, this is the trait that you would use in PvE as a support all the time. Heal yourself and gain adrenaline for each point of motivation spent. That's really potent as a bruiser. That's insane. You get so much healing out of that. It's crazy. And a lot of adrenaline. So really strong trait for competitive modes, I would say. In PvE, it's only for yourself, so I don't see that being run. Maybe for the adrenaline, but interesting trait for sure. That's the first one that is actually interesting, I would say. And this one, Command Echoes can trigger second time. This is again a trait that is not really like quite flashy, but it's really strong. That means all your commands will trigger another time, the echoes. And that means you can trigger them again by using 2 burst skills, for example, and get them all like instantly triggered. Or you can wait this 3 seconds and then another 3 seconds. And you can get the invulnerability like for your allies 2 times. Really strong. So you can actually get 6 seconds of invulnerability to your allies, so to say. It's not invulnerability, but close to it. This is the alacrity trait. That's the one that I mentioned earlier. It's not too exciting, but it's strong. Whenever you transition to a different chant, so F2 into F3 and that kind of stuff, you actually give alacrity around you. It is really strong with the trait that we mentioned earlier. So this one that gives you 2-second recharge if you swap your chants, because that means you get alacrity and get the recharge. So really, really strong. But this is really interesting. This grants alacrity in PvE only. In PvP and World vs. World, this grants quickness. So very first time that we get alacrity in PvE, where we get quickness in competitive modes. Quickness is a really strong trait in competitive modes. Maybe not as strong as alacrity, but it's still very, very strong. And it will be very obnoxious. If the duration is long enough, it will be absolutely obnoxious in all game modes. So just because of that, it will probably be like run in like competitive modes all the time. And then you have strengthening stanzas. That's the trait that makes it possible to play as a full DPS build. However, it's competing against the alacrity trait. So you will never play alacrity DPS because you don't have alacrity or you don't have any damage, so you have to choose, and that's not good. So this will be giving you a 20% damage buff or 50% movements buff or minus 20% incoming damage buff. So really strong trait for full aggressive bruisers or something like that, but not for any support. This is like the trait that you take if you don't want to support your allies, just baseline. Interesting part here for me is that it plus 20% lifesteal damage makes it quite interesting, for example, on 100 CM and fractals. So just a take there, but I'm not sure if it can get better than the Willbender for the Gluttony. But interesting for sure. Lastly, we have Enduring Refrain. That's a little bit like your refrain effects are stronger and they have reduced costs. The motivation costs are lower. That is a trait that I would say maybe you run it competitive modes, but the thing is you would never run it in PvE because you don't provide alacrity and you don't take the DPS trait. So I'm not really sure what this trait is supposed to fill, which kind of role, but maybe in competitive modes to get the chance a little bit more active, so to say have more pulsing. But I think that's again not too exciting, but maybe you take it, maybe. So overall I would say Paragon for me has quite dull traits that are strong but not too exciting in terms of how they play. It's just you take the one for alacrity, you take the one for DPS. That's just very fixed. I think they need to rework maybe 3 of them to make it a bit more exciting. I really hope they do. I think the utility skills are decent, and I think the class mechanic is also quite fun. I think it will be a really good healer in all game modes. It might be a really good bruiser in competitive modes, and it probably will be a decent DPS in PvE as well. But there will be no alacrity DPS. That is not existing in my opinion. And I think the interesting part is that the Paragon full DPS build still has access to the invulnerability. So I think it might be that you play a full DPS Paragon that just takes the lead skill of Paragon to get invulnerability to its party. So you have a really good defensive DPS, so to say, that you can take just to negate some damage. Really interesting. We did not see that yet. The same goes for Troubadour, to be honest. You can play a full DPS Troubadour and take the distortion sharing with elite skill. So very interesting how this interacts. We will see how the future turns out. So overall, I actually think the Paragon is not bad, but I think some people expected a little bit more interesting things. I think it will be very good, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying the fantasy here is not perfect, it's not perfect. It could have been a little bit better. As always, let me know your takes in the comments down below about this interesting elite spec. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Again, special shout out to all my supporters that help me keep the lights on. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.